Hey, hello friends, welcome to my channel. In this Python beginner tutorial series, today let's discuss about what is for loop in Python. Okay, this is part 2 of our Python for loop video. In part 1, we covered a quick introduction about for loop, when and where to use for loop, and how to loop through a sequence, and how to use range function in for loop, and how to work with else in for loop. Right. So continuing with that series, in part 2, let's look at few more topics as well. All right. So first we'll look at what is break statement in Python. Okay, so as the name indicates, you break a loop at a particular point. All right. So if I start looking at the definition, with the break statement, we can stop the loop before it has looped through all the items. All right. Say you have a sequence of 100 items. You want to stop at a particular point when a condition is satisfied or due to some other reason. All right. So in that situation, you can use a break statement. Say you have a sequence of 100 items. Okay. So you want to stop at a 50th place. Okay, so whenever a number is 50, you want to break the loop. All right. So what you can do is, as soon as the condition is satisfied at 50th place, you can break it. You can use a break statement and stop the loop. Instead of looping through each and every item, instead of looping through 100 different items, you can stop at 50th place. All right. So that is when break is very useful to work with loops, and it is one of a efficient way of working with loops as well. All right. So this break statement will be very useful in real-time programming. So let's see an example. And I'm not going to explain this flowchart. I think it is very straightforward. So probably I would suggest you to go through this. If you have any queries, you can let me know. All right. So let me, just to save some time, let me copy and paste this example. I have a list called players. Okay. So I have players details. So I'm using a for condition to loop through each and every items in my list. All right. So as soon as my condition is Virath, okay, so if my x value is Virath, that is my second item, if my condition is satisfied, I want to break break at that point. All right. So I do not want to run through each and every item in my loop. So if I run this, what will happen is it will just print the first item, because my condition is satisfied here, right? So it will not go through the each and every item. Okay, so this is when, so here the example is very simple. I just have 3 items in my sequence. Whereas if you work on like a larger sequence in real-time programming, it will be very useful. Like the break statement will be very useful. All right. So this is how you will use a break. Next is again just kind of opposite to it. We have something called continue statement. All right. So with the continue statement, we can stop the current iteration. We can stop the current iteration of the loop and continue the next. Okay. So when do you use continue statement? All right. So you have loops, right? Loops in Python automate and repeat the task in an efficient manner. But sometimes there may arise a condition where you want to exit the loop completely, skip an iteration, or ignore that condition. All right. So in those kind of situation, you can use this continue statement. All right. So what continue will do is it will skip that part and continue with the next item, whereas break completely stops, whereas continue will as soon as the condition is satisfied, it will skip that part and continue. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use continue statement here instead of break. Right. So if I use this, you can see first my Sachin, the value Sachin got printed, and next value is ignored, and it continued with the remaining items in my loop. In case if I add a few more items as well, say Chahal. Now if you see, it will continue with the remaining items present in my sequence as well. All right. So this is how a continue statement also will be very useful in real-time programming. All right. Now I hope you understood how break and continue statement works in Python. All right. So continuing with the next topic, let's see how to use break in else in for loop. Alright, in our previous video I spoken about how to work with else in for loop, right? So in case if you have any queries, I would suggest you to look at that video. Here I'm just adding a single condition here, how to use a break statement. So what happens when you use a break statement? Will the else condition work? Alright, so if we are using a break, it means it breaked here, so it will not go into else condition, right? Whereas if you are using a continue statement, then probably it might come. Alright, so let's see how this example works. Alright, sorry for this messy, just to save some time I'm just copying and pasting it. Alright, now we are good. Alright, now you can see it's still the same, right? So here I breaked it, right? My condition got break, so it just printed my first value. If I use continue, now you can see it executed my condition, right? So it printed Sachin. Now the condition Virat is satisfied, so it printed Dhoni, and it came to the else condition as well, it printed completed as well. Okay, so this is something very important to note. That's why I just added this condition, this context here, right? So how to work with break and continue statement in else and for loop, right? So just to reiterate again, so in case if you are using an if and else condition, right? If you're using an else condition, if you're using a break statement, then it will not come into this else at all. Whereas if you use a continue statement, it will come into this particular else statement. Alright, so this is something very unique condition that is present in Python, where most people are not aware about. So I have just added this particular context here. Alright, so next, jumping on to next topic, let's try to understand what is nested for loop. Alright, so as the name indicates, nested means you will use a loop inside a loop, right? So there will be a real-time situation where you want to use a loop inside a loop, like multiple for loops. All right, so those kind of loops are called as nested loops. All right, so the inner loop will be executed one time for each iteration of the outer loop. Let me show an example so that you will have a clear understanding about how nested loop works. All right, so I've given a, okay, let me copy and paste this in my PyCharm. All right, so first I have my one list called cricket players, okay, and my second list called football players, and I'm iterating through each and every item in my cricket players list. So for X in cricket players and for Y in football players, okay, you see for each and every item in my outer loop, so this is my outer loop, right? So for X in cricket player is my outer loop, this is my inner loop. So here I'm iterating through each and every item in my football player list, right? So this is my inner loop. For each and every inner loop, I'm just printing X comma Y, and I'm just printing as I'm just giving a print statement called outer loop. So what will happen is so it will pick each and every item, right? For Sachin, it will pick Messi, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho. So it will pick up each and every permutation combination. So and for Virat, it will pick again Messi, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho. Dhoni, it will pick Messi, Ronaldo, and Ronaldinho. Alright, so that's what my print X and Y will do. Okay, so whereas this outer loop will execute only once for my outer loop. Alright, so there's a difference between inner loop and outer loop. Alright, so let me run and show you this so that you, with the output, you can easily rate how this inner and outer loop works. So if you now look at this, my first item is Sachin, right? So Sachin got tagged with Messi or Ronaldo and Ronaldinho, right? So that's my first three output. So if you look at the next output in the console, it printed outer loop, but it printed only once. That is something key to note, because that's an outer loop. You are just using it only once. So you can see I have given the indentation. So indentation is very clear, necessary for us to understand how Python behaves, right? So here in my print x and y, this is my inner loop, so it went through each and every iteration, whereas my outer loop got printed only once for this one, right? So now if I come again, so my next sequence will pick up Virat, Messi, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, and again outer loop. Excuse me. So Virat Messi, Virat Ronaldo, Virat Ronaldinho, and outer loop. Right? So again same will follow. Dhoni Messi, Dhoni Ronaldo, Dhoni Ronaldinho, and again an outer loop. Right? So this is how a nested for loop will work. Okay. In this example, I just have only two for loops here, but you can have any number of for loops here. You know, if you have a condition to add another for loop also, you can add in another for loop here. All right. So this is how a nested for loop will work. All right. So just to reiterate, the inner loop will execute the number of times you specified, whereas outer loop will specify will run once according to your sequence. Outer loop will not run 3 times. Right. So here Sachin came 3 times, whereas outer loop came only once. All right. So that is something very important for us to note. All right. This is how nested loop will work. And just to give you another example of how to work with break statement, I have added this example in nested for loop. So let me show you that one as well. Excuse me. So here it is. I have the same excuse me. I have the same example, but one thing is I have added a condition called if y equal to Ronaldo, and I'm breaking it. As soon as my y value is Ronaldo, I'm just breaking it. All right. So it's the same example, but I've just added a condition only. So let's run and see what happens. So here it is. So first it took Sachin and Messi. So the first item in my first list, first item in my second list, right? And then came Virat and Messi, Dhoni and Messi. So if you look at this, as soon as it satisfied the Ronaldo condition, it broke out of the statement. It went out of the statement. So as soon as y is Ronaldo, it break, and it did not print anything after that. So it only printed first 3 condition which is satisfied. All right. So this is how you can use break statement with nested for loops as well. All right. So this is another example I just wanted to show you. And finally, we have something called pause statement. Right. So pause is in real-time programming you very hardly use it, but when you are debugging or when you are trying to develop a program, this pause will be very, very useful. All right. Pause is very simple. So whenever this for loop cannot be empty at any time, right? But for some reason, let me remove this pause statement. So my PyCharm ID already throws an error, but if you run also it will throw some error, right? Because it is expecting something. But for some reason you want to keep your for loop empty. All right, you cannot keep your for loop empty, but what you can do is you can just add a pause statement. Now if you run this pause statement, it will not throw an error. Okay, so in real time debugging situations and all, this pause statement will be very, very handy. All right, so for loops cannot be empty, but if you for some reason have a for loop with no content, but in the pause statement, but you use the pause statement to avoid getting any error, right? So as simple as that, you just use this pause statement in order to avoid some error when you want to have an empty item in the for loop. All right, so yeah, that's all what I want to cover as part of this video, guys. I hope you understood how to work with for loops. In case if you have any queries, please post it into the comment section. I will try to answer you as soon as possible. Thank you.